I think, first of all, I mean, I don't want to engage in some kind of Germany bashing. I know
Nobody
that
wants.
no, and I think the Zeitenwende, I understand that it was, you know, it was a big step. I mean, my own country, Sweden, went through some similar big steps. It was a big mind shift to decide to apply for NATO membership. But when we look at the Zeitenwende, it's of course only half baked, and it's quite urgent actually to make sure that that thing can come out of the oven and we can all use that. I think to sum up, I mean, a little bit what others have said. I mean, the themes have really been fear and leadership, right? And strategic leadership. So maybe I should start there. I mean, the easy question is, what do we expect from Germany? It's strategic leadership. But I think we also need to understand that whether or not Germany wants to lead, people will follow just by the fact that, you know, Germany is what Germany is. And the risk aversion that we see in German policies, I mean, it becomes an alibi for others as well, including my own country in certain aspects. And it becomes a drag on the West's resolve in handling the situation where we are. And I mean, not least also in this really weird dynamic between Berlin and Washington, D.C. Because we say, at least Swedes say, and I think a lot of Germans say as well, okay, this is existential for us. But we don't actually act as if this is existential. And why don't we do that? I mean, there we get into the fear again. And I mean, you've mentioned the escalation fear, the fear of a Russian collapse. I mean, this idea that it's inevitable that Ukraine will lose and Russia will eventually prevail because it's so much bigger and scarier. I think all these things are, to a certain extent, I mean, they're ghosts in our mind, right? And they're ghosts that really benefit Russia at the end of the day. And they also keep our thinking about what we can do, about the options we actually have on the table, really inside the box, inside little bureaucratic boxes of, you know, fear and constraint. So how do we get out of that? I think the way to do that is to think about the opportunity costs. What is it, I mean, among a lot of bad, tricky alternatives, which one is the least bad? I mean, this is how we build resolve, right? So if we accept that fear is a driving factor for policy, what is it actually that we should fear? I think very often we don't finish that thought. When I say we, I mean Germany also. And I mean, as others have said, I mean, anything less than a Ukrainian victory and a Russian military defeat in Ukraine actually means, you know, that Russia harvests fruits of aggression. And it puts us in a very difficult situation. I mean, we talk about, you know, international law, global order, European security order, and so on. But what this really is a betrayal of the whole European project, the whole idea of nie wieder, right? And it would also put us in a situation where we have to carry the moral burden for all the suffering that is happening in Ukraine because we didn't act, we didn't use our agency to the fullest. So again, finishing the thought, I mean, you know, people write things about this and more, I think, should be written about this. You know, what kind of situation will we actually find ourselves in this scenario? I mean, we would have a failed state on our border, bringing instability for perpetuity, more or less. We would know that this is only the first step. There would be massive refugee flows. We would have an emboldened Russia, which would mean that we would need to increase our military spending by times, right? And I mean, just to put one number on that, I have a friend who's an economist. He was calculating how much it would cost if we were, I mean, European countries would raise our military spending by 1%, so say from 2% to 3% of GDP for 10 years, which is, you know, I would say a very modest response to an emboldened Russia that has actually gone victorious out of the war. And that would land on a sum of 2,000 billion euros. Compare that to the kind of sums we're talking about when we talk about supporting Ukraine. I think we should also understand that this would mean a lot to our unity, the Western unity, the future of our alliances, our credibility globally, not least. We will find ourselves in a situation where Russia and Russian thinking about the world will actually set the tone in global affairs. And we, with our weakened alliances, our very low credibility, will have to somehow find a way to pursue our interests in this situation. So, I mean, these are the things we should fear. This is what should keep us up at night. And this is what I hope would sort of give us the strength to take on strategic leadership and realize our agency. And I think Germany doesn't have to do this alone. I mean, we're in a situation where, I mean, everybody wants to bring Germany in, right? I mean, we have like the Weimar Triangle, but I mean, also from a Swedish perspective, you know, we talk a lot about, you know, the Nordic-Baltic group, the NB8, plus our dear friends across the Baltic. I mean, the Poles and the Germans. I mean, it's a wet dream for us to actually have a strategic security partnership with you know, the NB8 plus 2. That would be excellent. Andrews is looking at me like, oh, I'm not sure about this. So, in terms of, you know, how do we sort of work on this strategy? I mean, a strategy that actually has Ukrainian victory as its objective. I mean, we've mentioned a lot of things where Germany could and should lead. I mean, an invitation to NATO at the summit this summer, the seizure of assets, the tribunal. I think it was great that you brought that up. We talk far too little about accountability nowadays for some reason. I mean, the drastic increase in military support, the removal of caveats on use of weapons as well as types of conventional weapons, all sorts of creative ways that we can use to alleviate Ukraine's manpower problems. I mean, in terms of using air defense, actually on NATO soil, but protecting areas in Ukraine and so on. But what I think, okay, here's my last point, I promise. I think the key thing really is the mental shift that really needs to come. I mean, we need to get out of the wishful thinking about Russia. I personally, you know, when I came from the airport yesterday and I saw these election campaign posters talking about Friede, you know, I go like, okay, but what does this actually mean for Germany? I mean, doesn't it actually mean negotiations, some kind of Ostpolitik? And that scares me, to be honest, a lot. So I think we need to draw the conclusions from the process with the Minsk agreement, the Normandy format and so on, avoid this trap of getting into that mindset ever again and realize that there is no way to go back. We can only go forward at this point. And the things that Germany and the rest of Europe can do now, they are the cheap and easy things compared to what they will look like. I mean, or what our responses will have to look like down the line.